The Columbia River Gorge is a beautiful place to go hiking between Corbett and Hood River, Oregon. And I got the idea of hiking the whole Columbia River Gorge on the Oregon side, going past Angel's Rest, behind Multnomah Falls, over onto Yeon Mountain, down to Tanner Creek, past Tanner Butte, around and across Eagle Creek, over to Wadham Lake, and up towards Mount Defiance. And from Mount Defiance, I had the idea of finding trails that would lead me eventually to Mitchell Point, what I consider the end of the western part of the Columbia River Gorge. So I set out hiking in late July 2011. And here's some of what I saw the first day on the Angel's Rest Trail. Angel's Rest is just a couple miles up from the trailhead, and it's a nice scenic point. You can see into the Columbia River and parts of the gorge itself. After that, I just hiked in the forest for quite a long time, behind some of the waterfalls and across some creeks, up over onto some ridges. Really just a beautiful hike. Only saw one person that morning. And although I didn't see many people, I heard an owl at one point, distinctly. It was a great horned owl. So I spent quite a bit of time hiking really slowly, scanning the trees, going back and forth in the forest, trying to just get an eyeball on this owl, but I never did find him. Eventually I did find this spider weaving a beautiful web. It was up on the ridge by Yeon Mountain. We also got some views into the gorge. There's Mount Adams off in the distance. Over to Nesmith Point, where there's a broken shack and some views back in the direction of where I started out earlier that day. Later on in the day, I could see the Tanner Ridge, where I'd be heading the next morning. There's Tanner Butte and Mount Hood. Camped at Tanner Creek that night. Next day, headed up the ridge there with Tanner, around across Eagle Creek and over to Wadham Lake. Here are some of the sights from that day. Some foxglove. Careful not to touch those. And then I headed up a very steep, difficult trail, one of the most difficult parts of the whole trip, up towards the ridge, Tanner Ridge. They call it the Tanner Cutoff. This sign provides a little bit of commentary on that trail. Some Indian paintbrush high up on Tanner Ridge. Later on in the evening, Wadham Lake, looking very calm and peaceful, where I camped out that night as well. Third day, I hope to finish up the hike, get to Mitchell Point. Didn't turn out that way. After getting up on Mount Defiance, I hit a dead end after Warren Lake on my way to Mitchell Point. Eventually went over to Starvation Ridge, finished up my hike there. Here's a friend I made on the trail just north of Wadham Lake. On ridge near Greenhorn Mountain, could see Benson Plateau, Tom Lake Mountain, Chinnadeer Mountain, Mount Hood, and if I looked really carefully, could get glimpses of Mount Jefferson at this point in time. To the north, Mount Adams, and finally a view of Mount Defiance, which I'd be climbing up in just a couple hours. After hiking all day, I just couldn't wait to be done actually, and eventually got some glimpses of the river as I was coming down Starvation Ridge. Just thrilled that I made it this far. I hiked about 60 miles over the course of the 3 days, and my camera work even got really lousy towards the end of the trip because I was so tired. Couldn't even hold it straight. What had started off as just a wintertime daydream staring at maps turned into a real summer adventure in the Columbia River Gorge.